but if you don't bring it to class.
It's the same as a clicker in that case.
Yeah, but a clicker, there's a motivation because you're getting credit for it. I was even I would randomly give money to students.
Wow, not just throwing candy at them.
For after each clicker question, or each
colored
colored card question, by picking some random location, because I was in a big room, if they actually had the cards. You know, okay, 6th row and 8 over, I'll give you $2 or something.
So
even that was not enough to get the high enough participation.
So I used these colored cards last semester, or 2 semesters ago, to try. One section I used clickers and one section I used colored cards, which is whole other interesting story. But I had to make about twice as many copies as I had students. But I used the embarrassment approach of if they didn't vote, I walked up to them and said, is your card broken? And they said, no, it's not with me. And I said, here's an extra one for you. So they then learned not to forget theirs. But I had to make 200 copies or 300 copies for my 150-person class. So there's that.
Pedagogically more demanding.
So we're officially over. Are there any topics up here or otherwise that we really have to discuss with our collective brain power?
So can I just follow up in 30 seconds on the colored cards versus the clickers? So there's several papers out now that have done some aspect of that kind of experiment, or at least noted and tried to come up with sort of a framework, or at least what is it sort of behaviorally or whatever about clickers that make students behave in a certain way, generally ways that we like, right? So why are they willing to participate? Why are they committing to an answer? And I also we had a sort of failed little study where we were trying to understand raising hands, which is basically as far as you can get on the spectrum from using clickers. It's not anonymous. You can't record it. There's no credit, So that private anonymity public anonymity where you aren't declaring your answer in any way to anyone else seems to be really important. And so that's one thing that clickers have that basically you could try to do it other ways. You could have students close their eyes and hold up their cards. So that seems to be an affordance of clicker technology that you can't get any way. Really, you can't get it as purely as you can. So no one can actually tell what you are personally voting. So that seems to really be important for students giving honest answers. And that's what we want. We want students to give honest answers, right? So we can know what they're really thinking, so we can respond in an appropriate way. And they know what they're thinking compares to what the instructor wants them to think. And then, I think many of you have used clickers a long time. You have observed these things, and you know it's true in your own classroom. So it's that anonymity, that private accountability, where you are accountable in some way. That affordance is there. It doesn't mean everyone does that, but that's a part of the technology. You're being recorded, you're getting credit, you're having incentive for doing the behavior, for engaging with the question even. And then that feedback element, that real-time feedback that you can have the histogram. And there's various things you guys know better than I do with using the histogram effectively. Do you show it, do you not show it? And there's reasons for doing that. But that showing the histogram triggers an effect on student behavior that you really can't do that in any other way. So I think these affordances of the clicker technology are limited to the ones that have the multiple choice, and I don't know how that transfers to any other use.
So I've noticed that the moment where I have the students' attention most completely is when I'm about to show the history. And of course, you never have that with color cards.
And I don't remember where it's from, but one slide that I do show in my workshops to show why anonymity matters was someone to ask the same question in 3 different classes using, maybe you know this one, like colored cards, raising hands and clickers, and like raising hands, like the percent correct was like 95%, with colored cards, percent correct was like 80%, and like with clickers, percent correct was like 60%. And so I'm like, which one do you think is the true measure? So. But I also,
you're right. Raise your hand.
People get smarter.
Yeah. But I also believe, I do these workshops for faculty and for teachers, and I do believe in not sacrificing the good to the perfect. People are not going to be able to use the pedagogy because they can't get the technology. I encourage them to use the pedagogy with colored cards. It's better than nothing.
And you can certainly do a lot to set up the classroom environment to be more appropriate, in any
you're
With any
changing
of
the
the
culture of the
Yeah,
classroom.
Colored
Yeah.
cards work pretty well. We used them for
I
4
used them
years.
for years.
It's just if you're
Yeah,
comparing,
yeah, right.
yeah, are you comparing nothing versus
Right.
clickers, or are you comparing clickers?
Or you're
versus cards?
voting with your, raising your hand,
Yeah.
it's clearly not gonna give you the same response.
I think your point of changing the culture is critical because we really are looking for cultural change with these technologies. We're not just throwing in some questions because someone told us that was a good thing to do. We're looking for changing the way the students are interacting in the classroom. And that can be done in
Professor
multiple
is
ways.
interacting.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, we are.
Yeah.
But I know of colleagues in my department who are using clickers because that's what we're supposed to be doing now. Who have never, I don't think they've ever even really thought about the pedagogy or the purpose of clickers. And so those classes that nominally look like the same as mine are really different places.
Because the culture's not
Yeah.
changed. Yeah.
But even, it seems like even in those cases, based on some of my research, and then we did a sort of cross-campus
Better than nothing.
survey, exactly, a survey with different SEI departments, even 95% of students said they supported the use of clickers in classes. Even, so it was like 100
high.
different classes.
That's impressively high.
So even when it's not the best, you're not doing it in a perfect pedagogical way, students find it to be useful. They would recommend it.
Although I did talk to students who were in a class that I saw it wasn't being implemented in our sort of ideal sense, and they had nothing good to say about
Okay.
it. Like when I was doing the clicker video, like I did interviews with students from a variety of different classes, and I couldn't use any of the interviews from one of the classes because it just even though it looked good, the questions were more sort of testing. They weren't really get that. They didn't have that like, ooh, I wanted to talk about that kind
I
of.
wonder if that's a fade.
It's not the magic bullet.
Well, and so I guess my question relates to that is that I know a faculty member who uses them in grad level classes in that sort of way, and I think that he would be interested in kind of moving towards the next level, but he doesn't have the time or isn't willing to invest the time in reading the literature that would teach him how to do that. And so I don't know kind of how things are offered at faculty meetings, perhaps in Robert's department, which is my department, but what would work for him or what would be ideal for him is 1 to 3 seminar-style lectures with kind of good demonstration of clickers where somebody goes through and says, the benefits from using them in the kind of, ultimate See Boulder way is this, and these are how you need to design the questions. Because he's fine at being able to design the questions that are the kind of lower level, can you calculate the right answer? But I think he just doesn't see the link because it hasn't been demonstrated for him very well to how you build those more complex kind of conceptual questions.
Send him Stephanie's
Yeah,
SEI
so-
videos.
Let me just comment on that. I'm using clickers in a graduate course for the first time this semester, and I'm finding it really hard to design good questions at the
Yeah.
graduate level. I've used them in upper division courses, but graduate is at another level altogether, and so I can see, I do know, just like, since we have multiple departments here, I know some people in physics, some of the physics
AMO
courses have used them. But if we could sort of identify those people who have tried them, in various
I tried
departments
it in a
and get together.
graduate class, and the students were much more resistant. It's like they went through all their undergraduate doing
Yeah.
it another way, and it's like, no,
Yeah.
I want lectures in
That's
spite
the-
of my efforts to explain why.
Yeah, that's not so much of a problem for me because my students have been TAs in classes using clickers, and I passed the clickers out and said, I've never actually used one of these things myself. They were really kind of curious about it. But it's the
Somebody
question
that's
design
maybe
that's
who
really
teaches,
really
a
hard.
core sequence. I imagine all graduate programs have some kind of core sequence. And we have one professor who does all of his core lectures for the grad students with clickers. So he might be a good resource just to see, like,
Yeah.
what he did. So, ask him.
Okay, then let's thank our panelists.